Hello. Today I have the pleasure of discussing the word of the day, which is hearing aids. I literally say this word dozens of times daily throughout my work week. However, to many Americans, this word is still mysterious. There's still a lot of social stigmas, and to many Americans, it's a word that's kind of optional for their lives. So today we're going to talk about hearing aids. Hearing aids. Before we jump into actually what a hearing aid is, I wanted to introduce one of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite Americans. Her name is Helen Keller, and hopefully many of you have heard of her. Helen Keller was actually both deaf and blind, and once she was asked if she can have one of those senses back, which one would she want? She said, "Vision connects us to things, to things. However, hearing connects us back to people." And the first time I heard that quote, I literally got goosebumps because it was so profound. Although I love my Apple products, they're still just things, but hearing connects us to our loved ones, to my patients, to my students, and to my friends. So, hearing is very important. However, again, to many Americans in our Western civilization, it's still mysterious. A lot of people are nervous or even hesitant or somewhat fearful of actually even seeing what's going on with their hearing. However, if there is a hearing problem, we just simply need to get help by getting a hearing aid. First, a patient needs to go and get a thorough hearing evaluation. When we give a thorough hearing evaluation, I tell my patients, patient X, we're going to test your ears on this chart called an audiogram. The audiogram tests your ears across the piano keys from low to up, 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 up. And at each piano key or frequency, I'm going to give you beeps and see what level you hear. I'll give you beeps from 0 decibels as loud as 120 decibels and loud and soft at each piano key. All you do is raise your hand when you hear those beeps. If your ear is normal, in that normal range, that means the beeps stay between -10 and 25. As long as both of your ears stay in this normal box, that means both of your ears are normal. However, if one or both ears fall below this normal range, then that means that you are a candidate for a hearing aid or hearing aids. Of course, the thorough evaluation will determine if this breakdown of hearing is because of wax, is because of sinuses, or if it's because of nerve. If it's because of the nerve, which is the 8th cranial nerve or the vestibular cochlear nerve, if you know about those 12 cranial nerves, it's the 8th vestibular balanced cochlear nerve, then a hearing aid is the best fit. So what is a hearing aid? A hearing aid actually goes back to this chart when we talked about frequencies or piano keys. And depending on where the piano key falls, the hearing aid helps amplify that back to the normal range. Speaking of amplification, a lot of people believe that a hearing aid is just an amplifier. And so they're not the same thing. An amplifier simply just makes everything louder or softer. However, a hearing aid is very specific and is very prescriptive. We take a thorough hearing evaluation, which consists of a minimum of 6 tests, and we put all of that inside of the hearing aid. We find out a person's threshold, which is the softest that a person can hear. Then we find out the loudest that is tolerable by a person. We see the softest that is comfortable for speech, and we find out all of these other parameters, and we put them inside of a hearing aid with their hearing prescription. We test each ear individually, and we have a prescriptive formula or fitting prescription for each individual hearing aid. So therefore, each individual hearing aid is tailored for a specific person. It's not something like an amplifier, again, which is a one-size-fit-all. It makes everything louder or softer. One thing that we actually know, seeing that we don't hear with these little tangible things that we see out here, we hear in our brain. And so we know that if there is a breakdown of hearing and a person needs a hearing aid, there's actually been a lot of scientific evidence and research that links an untreated hearing loss directly with them developing Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as cognitive decline. So therefore, if a person does have a hearing loss, they definitely need to utilize and wear hearing aids. Hearing aids are actually very small and discreet nowadays. This specific one matches my skin tone. It's blue, meaning that it's for the left ear. And like all hearing aids, they take batteries. This particular one takes the brown batteries, which last 7 to 10 days. However, some smaller hearing aids take the yellow batteries, which actually last 2 to 3 days on average. Other hearing aids take a little larger battery. The orange ones that last 10 to 15 days. And some of those bigger hearing aids take the biggest battery, which are the big blues, which last about 20 plus days. However, no matter what the hearing aid that you wear, all hearing aids do require some type of battery, whether disposable or rechargeable. Most hearing aids nowadays actually have a little toggle switch or a little button on them, meaning that patients individually can control and alter their hearing for a better hearing listening experience. To put hearing aids in, there's a lot of different methods. However, once it's properly inserted in a person's ears, the goal should be to be very discreet. However, to provide amplification that a patient and a person can hear back at those frequencies that were outside of the normal range. So this is typically what some hearing aids look like. They're not as obvious as one must think. Head on, you probably wouldn't even notice that I had it on. However, on the side, it is a little visible. However, there's a problem. 50, 60 years ago, there was a huge social stigma about glasses. A lot of people didn't want to wear glasses because some of them were deemed as less intelligent. They were nerds. There was all these other social stigmas. However, now there's a lot of fashion statements, and people actually even poke the lenses out of their glasses for fashion. However, I'm not saying people are going to run to the doors and say, hey, Frazier, I want a hearing aid to match my outfit for this weekend. However, I brought the analogy up to show that social stigmas do change in our society, and by lessening the social stigma, showing that hearing aids are not as big and bulky, they're not as big of a deal as one must think, and they can easily be synthesized in our daily life, and they can provide us hearing if a person actually needs a hearing aid.